Hey. All right. This is Stephen R. of Zygote. Right now you see the LAxD flyer right here, front and center. No face, just a flyer. Stephen R. of Zygote here, Architects and Heroes live stream show. Not so live stream, pre-recorded show right now. And we have some number one homies from Elbow Grease. We've got Dave Ajou and Rodney here to chop it up about what's going on with Elbow Grease right now. Also, what's going on with this, LAxD. So, dive and direct. Rodney, Dave Ajou, in the virtual building. My guys, my G's.
What up?
What's happening, guys?
So it's at another day at the headquarters.
Another day at the EGHQ.
EGHQ.
That's right.
Okay, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to. It's always good to see you guys. Always good to connect. Always good to chop it up. And so we've been putting a lot of this on blast. A lot of LAxD.
That's right.
But before we kind of dive into that, let's talk about the release of the Grease.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the label, the strides that have been made in the deep pandemic funk by the label, by the family, by the extended family of Black Lodge and Yaztec. There's a lot of shit to talk about. But first, welcome you guys.
Thanks for having us, man. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Most definitely. So,
all
right. So, first off, Mark, Dave Ajou, you've been in the game for a hot minute. All right. I would like you to introduce the fine gentleman on your right, the young Padawan, Rodney.
Wagwan.
The Wagwan.
Rodwan.
The Wigwam Wagwan. So Rodzo the Bodzo right here. Absolute utter gentleman, crusher DJ, amazing taste. Light years.
I've seen it in action.
Light years beyond what his blood age may, bestow upon papers and birth certificates.
Appreciate that.
It's kind of amazing actually that ages and generations may be between, but when we first met and linked up off some of my earlier productions, and I immediately acknowledged how much soul and passion and care that this man has for the music that we all call home. So obviously welcome participant, brother in arms, and quite frankly, the Elbow Grease thing, it's been in my heart. It's been in my hopper and on the side burner for a couple decades, but he was definitely a driving force to help motivate me to get this going. He helps out a lot of the other friends labels, Squirrels on Film, and some of these other cats. And, we wanted to make sure with the wax was there. We're pressing the vinyl. That's a guarantee. And this is, as you can see a little bit behind us here, this is a true vinyl purveyor, one of his younger generation that no doubts, no questions that's a key component to this culture that, that we all try to uphold. Vinyl DJing is at the core of this. Elbow Grease could never be a digital only release, not to knock those who are. It's just part of the deal. It's part of the package. There's no questions there. So who better to have as the man riding shotgun here than this man right here, Rodney?
Thanks, we got it again, man. I tell you what, I've seen Rodney play out. I've seen you, man, a few times, and deep cuts. Again, like homework for days, depth for days, smooth transitions, like the whole package, dude. And honestly, there are a lot of cats that are out there that they're just like, they're USB DJs. You know what I mean? They're like, and again, not to knock it. I mean, I pared my collection down by about 70% just out of necessity. You know what I mean? You move a couple times with a shitload of vinyl, and you realize you're like, ooh, there's some doubles I don't need. But at the end of the day, like it's just really, it's great to have somebody who's coming up in the game you know, for a hot minute now for sure, but like who's still coming up in the game, who has that depth of knowledge, and I just want to acknowledge that and give you props. And Mark, I want to ask you, like, tell me a little bit. You know, elbow grease has been in the zeitgeist, in your head, and your culture for a minute. Tell me about the origin of the label.
Well, elbow grease is a term that my pops used to use a lot. You know, he was a jazz musician in the Bay Area, and he used to throw, I think you and I had a great combo about that a couple of years back, actually. He used to throw these underground jazz speakeasies where after a lot of the better known artists would go and play their money gigs, or sometimes they'd call them vanilla gigs for obvious reasons. You know, they'd come and jam the real shit.
I love white people. I have some of my best friends are white. I just want
exactly. But they, you know, the point is that they would go and make, you know, the higher paid, higher promoted, higher attended money gigs, which happen to have certain audiences.
Yeah.
Go figure. And then afterwards, they'd come to Pops and his friends' basement, you know, jam, and it would be like a speakeasy thing where they'd play all night. So all this sounds very familiar, I'm sure. This is all territory that we're basically still purveying, albeit on different instruments at this point. And he was always like that. You know, he was always very much like, then his favorite term to throw around, he's like, oh, you don't need that shit. You just need elbow grease. Like, you don't need that. You don't need a bunch of cash. You don't need a bunch of this. You don't need a bunch of promoters or managers and shit. You just need elbow grease. You put in the work, you get there. You know, hard work, not hype, to quote our homie Monty Luke. You know, that kind of shit. And so I was always like, well, shit, if I ever do a label, I mean, that's it. You know, and part of the idea of the label and the name was that elbow grease, you know, of course, as many of us know, means like hard work. It's literally like, you know, and he used to be an engraver. And he was also one of the cats that used to go to the skyscrapers in Oakland to wash the windows from the outside. And he would tell us that the employers never gave him soap and shit. It was water, vinegar, and elbow grease. It was the recipe for that shit that they used to do. And with engraving, same thing. So the idea about it is putting in hard work at this end, so it pays off at that end. You know, just this kind of classic model of no shortcuts, no bullshit.
Yep.
And so, and that was always the idea. So by the time this came around, we were thinking like, okay, elbow, because there's so many different ways. At one point, I was like, I'm gonna wait until I'm just in a jazz band, and it'll be that. Or I'm gonna wait, you know, so many different iterations. Like yourself, Stephen, we love music of all shades and types. So it was kind of always hard. But then, you know, the DJ culture and the core of this, the idea of having single tracks that as a DJ that you could fall in love with and then have alternate versions of it to work into each other, gives the DJ an opportunity to do that elbow grease at their end. You know, and so each one of these tracks that's going to come out on the label, the first two so far are mine. The next one coming is another one that's these are all ones that have been sitting in the vault and kind of incubating for a while that needed to get a life of their own. My man's going to have his debut coming soon on here.
I'm sorry, what? Whoa, what?
Yeah.
You heard it here first?
Yeah, you heard it here
first. Breaking news. Okay, all right.
You know, so it's you know, it's going to be you know, tight family at first here, but the whole point is as long as there's these extensive and expansive pieces of music that kind of deserve their own light. So the whole point, like if you look at the records, you know, I mean, even if we take up, like, you know, we got X17 here. Now, if somebody sees this in the shop, they see elbow grease. Sure. Then you see the title, X17. If you read the very, very, very fine print down there, it says written, recorded, produced, and mixed by Mark David Aju Barite the First. Now, that's in very small type because the star of the show is X17. Not its maker, not the man. It's the piece of music. That's the key here. And elbow grease is its platform. And that's how we wanted to present this. The piece of music is the one, like over the years, like when we all first started out, like I was like, okay, heard my first party, heard my first DJs, even in the hip hop world, it's like, okay, you like a certain style of that.
Yeah.
Oh, I like MCs from Brooklyn, or I like house from Chicago. And then you kind of figure out the different labels and DJs that you like. And then you kind of figure out some of that, but down at the end of the day, it comes down to pieces of music.
Right.
You know, it's kind of in the funnel approach. The more you chip away at it, first you're like, okay, so even a kid now, like, I like EDM. Well, it's actually more like bass house, or maybe it's Brazilian house. It's actually this one Brazilian DJ. It's actually these two labels, and on those two labels, it's actually these three tracks that are magic, right? So the idea is just to get it to the point where the pieces of music that you can truly fall in love with and play over and over and never get sick of, and always find new ways to work in. That's the goal.
Yeah, no, you know, and it's really funny because like as a culture, you know, house and techno have always kind of been the focus on the people in the club, the people in the warehouse, the people on the dance floor, and like to the point where a lot of the cats in Detroit like started to wear a mask, or they started to hide their identity, or they started to obfuscate who they are as people, because at the end, oh, that was a loud ping over here.
This is a veritable ping pong match.
It is. It really is.
This is good that we're pre-recording. We can edit this shit out. I'm gonna turn the music down a little bit too. Cool. This is the edit moment.
Yeah, this is all live.
None.
Oh shit!
There we go.
We're live, bro.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
All the way live. Let me sip my water, my coffee.
Yeah, no shit.
Double twisted.
Cheers. I got a little iced coffee here myself.
I got it.
Okay. In the house and techno culture, there's always been a certain level of anonymity. The focus has been on the dancer. The focus has been on the people on the dance floor, and not necessarily as like the DJ, as the rock star. Now look at the EDM shit that's popping off now, and look, I don't want to slag anyone. I don't want to slag anything, but I feel like when the depth and the true nature of the culture was really about the song, really about the people on the dance floor, really about how the focus isn't necessarily on like the focal point isn't someone up on the stage, but it's about building the community. And you've always kind of taken that. That's always kind of been embedded in your philosophy about how you operate and how you navigate and how you show up for people in the community at large. And when the focus is on the music, you do have a little bit more leverage to do different things. And I'm curious, like, with the focal point being on the music, so you've got yourself releasing music, you've got Rodney releasing music. Let me ask you just really quick on the whole thing with Rodney. How did that all come together? Like, how does Rodney like fit into the equation with what's going on with Elbow Grease? Tell me. Let's expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll let him dive into that. Like I said, when we first met, I think it was probably through the second album I had done, Heirlooms, the one with the dedication.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. He was a very upfront and vocal supporter of that album, like many of my other friends that I'd met right around that time. And that was kind of a key thing, and we acknowledged pretty immediately.
Absolutely. I mean, there was this one remix of this record called Mitsukatsu.
That's right.
Which Mark had done a remix on, and I think you threw down some vocals on it as well. No?
Maybe, yeah, a couple extra like background layers.
Exactly.
I think
exactly.
Or something.
So that was something that we really connected on, because that was like, that was a track that we would play when everything would kind of hit the fan, we would play that, and it would immediately just bring us back to, balance and, just kind of equalize us the way it should, but so I saw Mark outside of Monarch in San Francisco, and I pulled it up on my phone. I was like, hey man, just wanted to say, thank you for this. And he was like, wow, like, about that shit? I was like, yeah. So, and on top of like the album, obviously Heirlooms, which is one of my favorites for sure, especially with, the deep-rooted causes and everything that it has in there musically and personally for Mark. So that really spoke volumes to me. For me to, play a part in this any way I can, it, just going back to the roots of that, I feel like when you get involved with a project, with, any kind of, thing that you want to help with or you want to do with a friend, I feel like the ground, foundation that you could lay is believing in it, really. If you don't believe in the project, if you don't play the product, now I'm not saying, you can play the digital out or however you want. There's a million ways of doing this at the end of the day. But the bigger scope of things is the responsibility that we have as artists. Now, it doesn't matter how old I am or how many years I have in the game, which is part of the reason why I felt that responsibility to go work at record shops, really come up the way that people would come up 20 years ago. Like that's what I really wanted to do. you know, instead of, you know, Instagram, OnlyFans, all that good stuff. So I just kind of wanted to.
Hey, man. I didn't know you were on OnlyFans, bro.
Yeah,
That's
man.
tight.
Yeah, you should subscribe, man.
You know, the record label's just.
I got a promo
Where
code.
this is
But yeah, I got a promo code, man. You know, but it's, you know, not to knock that, you know, but I just really, you know, that's what really spoke to me. I was like, okay, like, do you really want to learn this shit? Do you really want to do this shit? And you know, I got a DJ mentorship from our friend Tyrell Williams that's worked on tracks with Mark as well. But he would ask me all the time, like, do you really want it? How bad do you want it? Like, how, you know, like, what are you willing to do to you know, be able to play records out comfortably and, you know, mix into a record or not mix into a record, mix into, you know, somebody's playing digital, just like be able to seamlessly mix into it, you know, like, you know, Mark actually had this pretty good example of like, okay, like you can either learn how to play the guitar or you can sit down and play Guitar Hero and, you know what I mean? And just kind of, you know, be like, I shred on the guitar, but that's not really, you know, you don't, because your ear is not, you know, and that was one thing that honestly, like, I really struggled with. I mean, I played the piano and everything since I was a kid, classically trained, some jazz in there for sure. But I honestly had like zero, I wasn't even close to being able to put records together. Not that I wasn't, you know, I still made 2 house records sound like a drum and bass record. So that was, you know, that was something I was very good at.
Everybody puts a pair of Jordans in the dryer, you know, when you're starting out. Write some passage.
But, you know, that's the thing that really got me to, you know, just coming back to Elbow Grease and everything. Like, Mark had this vision. And I honestly, when I heard him talk about it, and obviously knowing his music and everything like that, I really believed in it. And I figured like, hey, like, if you really want to do this together, we can do it.
Yeah.
We can do this, we can do that, we can get it. You know, we have some friends that we got it pressed, you know, we got the record pressed there and everything. And yeah, I mean, it all just kind of tied in, and you know, second record sold out, and you know,
sir.
we're in a pretty good place. You know, the merch must go on. And it sold out. Got one right here, repping, stepping. But yeah, so that's just how it really came together. And
Saints go merching on.
I'm just really happy to have been a part of it. Like, seeing every single copy sell out for me is really amazing. Like, you know, like, because that just, it's DIY work. Like, we don't work with, you know, hyped up people that, you know, we're not really doing all of that. And most of the, you know, I mean, for the last one, when gas was a little cheaper, we did actually go do drop-offs ourselves, and it was great. It was really fun to do that, and
physical drop-offs,
you know, physical like drop-offs and stuff.
I really don't think there's any substitution for like the hand-to-hand combat model, and you know, it's great to know, like, you know, people that I over the years that whose shit that I just love. Like, when I engage with them, there's just another layer of magic that happens to me. You know what I mean? Like that, like when you are invested in the community and the people that you respect as artists, you become friends with, that connection. There's just really nothing like that. And there's really no disconnection. And again, to come back to that, like that community thing, right? Where you're like, hey, you know, it's not about me as being a rock star. It's about me as like adding something to the community, of building the community around me. And you know, I know the through line between all of us is this whole connection with Detroit, right? The whole Detroit connection. And I'm curious, like, Elbow Grease as a label, like, talk to me about the influence of Detroit artists and labels on what's going on with Elbow Grease.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. In fact, I could even pick up where Rod just left off. When we first started crossing paths and kicking it. And I remember, I think it was like an after party at the old, wasn't it that building? The
Nema
building,
the old temple.
The old after party temple in San Francisco that he was at. I think it was one of those, and a bunch of us went there after some gig that we had, you know, and everyone's doing their thing. It's late night, like early morning. Everyone's just going for it, whatever, playing records. And I'm like, damn, this kid, yo, shit, he's got a collection and that. Started playing some tracks. He throws on some KDJ shit and this and that. And then he throws on like a Sound Signature record. And I was like, wait, how the fuck old is this kid? All right, wait, what is going on here? Like, what did we just do? Wait, all right. All right. So then we go through, and then we started rapping about it. And then I quickly realized that his affinity for these records, especially from Detroit, you know, Chicago, New York as well, but especially from Detroit, and especially these really, you know, in our opinion, quintessential artists like Theo Parrish and his Sound Signature label, which I feel towards those kind of the way like Rod referenced that one remix I made to him. Like, when we started talking about that, and I told him, like, when the music business gets me really down, which, you know, happens more often than not sometimes these days, I throw on a Sound Signature record, I throw on one of Theo's creations, and it immediately brings me back in. It brings me back to the truth. There's something about the raw honesty, not only about musical origins of all kinds here in the States that I feel like a lot of these creators up there kind of embody, but those records themselves, I mean, that's kind of the feeling that I hope we can imbue into these elbow grease records when people come across them. I'll never forget sitting in Tweaking Records, Darren Davis, Guthrie, Nicola, James Glass, all, you know, and these guys, and I'm like digging through all the Detroit section, and I found like this baby blue record with some crazy label on it. Turns out it was Over Your Head on Sound Signature. It was the first one, and I literally sat there flipping that motherfucker like 6 or 7 times and listening. And I was just like, you know, and then they're like, hey, Mark, check this out, check that out. And they're throwing all these other records at me. I check the other record, come back to that Sound Signature and just go in. And what really struck me about it was just this rawness, this depth, this honesty that you just don't hear it in a lot of other places, quite frankly.
It's because there's a separation. And I really, truly believe this because, Mark, I know for a fact, like, knowing about the stuff that you do with Cam, knowing about your history, knowing about the legacy that you have in your family about like just knowing how to play fucking music, right? And not just like, you know, putting on a digital beat match tool or, you know what I mean? Like the depth of knowledge that you have about that, about the music, about the traditions, about how all of this stuff works. You have to be, it's like that little clip in that, in that DJ Shadow record. He's like, I'm a student, but I'm also a teacher, right?
Yeah.
And shout out to you, Professor, as well, for your role in teaching music as well. And you can chop that up a little bit as well. But that's just to say, like, you're steeped in the knowledge, the homework, the tradition. You know, you meet cats that play out, that DJ, that produce or whatever, and you're like, you know the dudes who can sit down at a keyboard and start playing. You know, dudes who could sit down at a kit and start playing. Like it peeled my dome back when I saw Jonas Sharp for the first time outside of an electronic music situation behind the fucking drums.
Rocking the drum set.
He murdered it. He absolutely murdered it. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm the session drummer on all these acid jazz records from back in the day. But that's not surprising. You hear you feel it in all the production that he does. And to me, that's a lot about like what the origin story is of this thing that we do and that we love, right? And it's not just about like this one lane thing. It's an amalgamation of all of these traditions and the roots and like, you know, and how that operates. And that just comes across in the 2 releases that you've dropped on Elbow Grease. Like it's just in the, like the first drop, like Dex and I were in the Bay a couple weeks ago, and I had the ambient version of this record, the Spacio Tempo record, and I dropped it, and it just resonates with like a knowingness about music, and you hear that in certain tracks, and it's this unquantifiable thing, you know, and I think that's really, if I think about the origin story of LAxD, right? Like that is what the through line is. It's about the roots. It's about the tradition. It's about the real fucking people that were there at the beginning. It was about the people of color at the beginning who were actually part of that. And I'd like for you to kind of tie the connection together with LAxD because I think it's just such a natural fit for you and for Black Lodge and for A&H and kind of how that Voltroning kind of manifested itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, the Detroit roots. I mean, another thing about it also, like you were just saying, is that I feel like the way that these artists, especially in Detroit, that are making techno, electro, house music, what have you, would choose your favorite marketing stamp. They're making music in the traditions of the musicians that were making jazz music, soul music, funk music, rhythm and blues music, at those times, which were also just marketing tags at the time. The creations that they're contributing into the pantheon of greater music hit different because they're doing it with that same level of heart and passion and soul. Part of the culture that's inherent in what they're doing is audible, literally audible in the music they do, the DJ sets they play, the approach they take to presenting themselves, the type of things that they say or do, maybe even on social media or things like that, are wildly different than a lot of what you see. I'd say, 80 to 90% of the DJ game these days are either people who don't know anything about that and don't acknowledge the fact that music that has rhythms at all is inherently black and brown music. Mm-hmm. It's inherently that. The drum came from Africa, came through Cuba and everything, and the Latin and Afro things combined, and that everything that we all do is relative to that. Now, 80, 90% of DJs might not actually know that, or maybe 70, let's say. Let's just be a little more generous today. Maybe it is a Friday. Let's say 70%, and then the other 20, they know, but they either don't care or they don't do anything about it to show the respect for it. So I know that Vikas from the Black Lodge, for example, amazing soldier. We actually have some funny, like old school ties, similar to like you and I, Stephen, going back 20 to 30 years. He was throwing Midwest raves back in Ohio, and his ex was actually the ex of the first person, Michael Minnick, that I threw parties with in San Francisco before I was even of age. I was 19 years old. And taught her about Detroit techno, who taught Michael, and who actually helped guide me when I first met Jonas Sharp, when I first met the Solid Grooves guys and all that. So there's a synergy going all the way back then. And Vikas is one of those, permanent, like, has the knife in his teeth, has his heart in the right place, doesn't take any bullshit, doesn't present any bullshit. It's clearly for the love. It's clearly done with high intent, high intelligence, and a pure passion to represent these cultures 100%. That are very clearly underrepresented or underappreciated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, that's 100%. And I think about, like the heritage of everybody involved in this particular event, and it's kind of mind-boggling. We got a whole Benetton ad worth of diversity here. With the Philippines are represented, Mexico is represented, Iran is represented, Persia represented, India represented, African American represented. Like it's Chile, there's a wide variety of cultures that kind of come together to do this. And I had a chance to really, really go deep with Dex when we were up in the Bay, and there's almost like a necessity to have an expansion and put the spotlight on what exactly is going on. And the funny thing about this particular medium, I really did this early pandemic because I was going ape shit crazy getting locked indoors. And I got to circulate, dude. I'm not someone who can stay indoors very long. Yeah. I got to get shit done. Like, I mean, even after a 10, 12-hour day, at the virtual office, I got things I need to do, and I gotta keep active.
An architect and a hero in the flesh himself here, ladies and gentlemen, by the way.
Yes. Much love. But that activity to me, I don't do anything on my own that's significant, straight up. Like everything I do is either collaborative. Like the stuff that I'm working on for Yaztec right now, direct line of sight with Mark Pistol, Consolidated, Meat Beat Manifesto, that whole history in that fucking studio with Dex, front, like everything to me is a collaboration. And every time I see that kind of connection, I think, there's a lot about the history that's been kind of talked about in lip service and maybe put on a post or whatever. But to me, I want to take the approach that like some of the OG Detroit guys have done by literally like taking it and expanding it into art museums, expanding it into panels, expanding the culture in a way where it's like, I would love to see a techno museum outside of Submerge with institutional support from on a national level. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
and
yeah,
I think there's got to be there are enough people that are kind of in our demographic at this point that are kind of that have rose through the ranks and have that kind of insight and have that kind of the connections, you know, because you got to be in the game for a minute to be able to even get on the phone with some of these people, to be able to say, look, this is an important, hugely important part of culture, and we're starting to lose people. You know what I mean? Paul Johnson, R.I.P., died of COVID. You know, Frankie Knuckles is gone. A lot of the cats that were instrumental in the coming up of all of this stuff are gone. And I think underground resistance represents that pocket of like just an absolute, you know, by any means necessary to get that word out. And I think what you guys are doing at Elbow Grease is an extension of that in a very real and tangible way, like from San Francisco to Los Angeles to Detroit. Like, I really feel passionately about the necessity to continue to push this in a direction that is not, because when I tell people that aren't schooled to electronic music, they're like, I don't like that. I don't know. They'll then rattle off whoever's like, you know, named du jour at the I'm not going to call.
Yeah, we all have to keep the names out of our mouth. We know how to. Yeah, that's all.
But you know what I'm saying. Like, it's like the history of it needs that recognition. So you know, I guess I would like you guys to speak on that for a minute. And Rodney, tell me how you in particular, because your demo has frankly blew it up, man. Honestly, like there are opportunities right now in electronic music that just simply didn't exist before, and it's your generation that actually kind of boosted that up. So props for that. But how in that sea of like constant social media posts and button pushing DJs, how did you get schooled? Like, how did that even fucking happen, man?
Honestly, I mean, the thing is, like, I feel like, you know, and one thing just really important with everything that we were saying with like how we all came together to do this, I just wanted to say, like, we never had a conversation about where anybody's from, what anybody does. We came together to keep the culture that we believe in alive. And that is seen through every single person that is involved. So it's kind of like, if you just kind of simplify that, you know what I mean? Yeah, I can go and try and, you know, find a bunch of Iranians to do something with, or Persians. Where are the Persians at? We're in LA. Let's do it. But the whole synergy between this is what I feel like, and the intention is what really brought us together. Now, you know, in terms of like, you know, the social media game and putting yourself out there and stuff, you know, one thing that, you know, people get really caught up in, I feel like, and it kind of seems that way, at least looking at this, is that it kind of becomes a popularity contest where the music gets lost in translation. I feel like if you were able to, for me personally, it was never about, you know, I was never like, okay, like, I really want to do this. I really want to have the privilege to play records for people, because it really is. But it was like, I never thought like, okay, I need a really strong Instagram presence. Like, it never even occurred to me, because I was busy practicing and making sure that I'm being respectful and carrying a lineage forward through the skill that is required to do that. I mean, that came from, you know, playing the piano from a really young age and everything. And one thing that I feel like people forget sometimes when they come into a social media kind of environment and they try to push their stuff, everybody, one thing that I feel like is important, and I try to tell myself this, is like, before all of this, I was someone, and I am someone. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't, you know, you share what you believe in, you share your environment, and somebody who connects with it. But in terms of like digging for music, yeah, on the flip side, I could say it's a lot easier to find out about stuff I'm like, oh, well, maybe, and I try to pay attention all the time. You know what I mean? I try to do the homework and at least pay attention instead of just wait for things to be spoon fed to me. Like, I feel like that's kind of what happens with like things like Spotify or YouTube, or if that becomes your medium, then you're just expecting to be spoon fed these things. And you can even see it in the audience almost. Like everybody's got their phones up or Shazamming or asking you what it is or telling you what to play. And nobody really, and I don't want to say nobody, but people seem to not really tap into what we're trying to have you experience. And we can't control what you experience, but we are creating this for you to come experience something that's way more above any track ID or any spotlight kind of situation. This is about love and appreciation for music, and that's really it, and I feel like with labels and stuff like that, yeah, Instagram does help. I can look at 12 label pages and know exactly what they put out. And some people are like, oh, we just put 5 copies up of this record that's $300 on Discogs, get it right now. And usually depending on what state I'm in or financially,
and like Colorado versus California,
financially, mentally, and yeah, definitely fuck with Colorado. Shout out to, but anyway, it's just kind of like these things also create a different avenue for selling records, for putting up merchandise and stuff like that. But I also feel like there's got to be a silver lining somewhere, that things balance out where we're not being, creepy about it. I feel like I feel creeped out when I'm talking, like, oh yeah, I got to go to the store and buy fabric softener, and then it's like on
your thing. You know what? It's really funny though.
Like we're not trying to do that. We're not trying to do that with the records. We're trying to.
By the way, this segment brought to my bounce right now. Just remember that if your clothes aren't bounced soft, they're not soft.
That's right.
But
it ain't right. It ain't right.
The funniest shit that I've always thought about this, and as somebody who's worked in tech, I'm mad conflicted because I've been working in tech for 2 decades, and I'm like, I kind of feel like I've architected some weird shit. I've done a lot of cool, like I'm doing a project for the VA right now. I feel hella good about that, right? I feel good about we're taking like connected devices, we're taking data from vets, we're giving it to clinicians. It's a beautiful thing, man. It's a beautiful thing. Now that's maybe 1/100th of my career overall to date, but like I've always looked at at technology and platforms and that this means like even like using Ableton or using digital DJ software or whatever. I've always looked at it. It's like a hammer, right? You can build a house, or you can hit someone in the head. Like you know what I mean? Like it's just a tool. And in my case, I've always looked at it from the perspective of like, the more I know about the things that are trying to fuck with me, the more that I know how to deconstruct that. And again, to come back to this underground resistance concept of like, taking that DIY thing into the metaverse. Honestly, where are we headed? What do we have waiting for us? Are we going to wait for it? Are we going to build it? Are we going to get rolled over by it? Are we going to get sucked into it? I mean, because frankly, I spend way too much fucking time on Instagram and Facebook and all these platforms. I don't, and because we're being manipulated all the time.
Yeah, just right? real in, for sure.
I mean, I sit down and run tests where I'm like, test out 15 different colors of links and see which one gets the most clicks. And when you figure that out, put that one up. After 15, we talked about this about ad impressions because we're running a campaign anyway. But to me, it's that same thing. It's like that knowledge sets you free. That ability to know the thing that's manipulating you sets you free. And if you've got that integrity of the roots, of the music, of the tradition, and you can bring that into this space to people that are just like, what do you? Feed if you're gonna feed the beast, give it something healthy.
Right. That's right.
I mean, this is something Mad Mike, if you're mentioning like underground resistance, Mad Mike did this lecture basically that he was, speaking about like, you can just, become an artist and move to Berlin and just try and just make it there or try to fit in there. But it has enough artists. You know what I mean? Like there's no shortage of that over there.
Right.
So it's just kind of about really making your environment that you're in and building from the ground up and building something that might, it might not be the same or the same, kind of level or as many people, but you can make that environment, something as like a cultural musical hub,
right? Vis-a-vis the contributions.
Exactly.
Right. I think that the give and take factor.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the thing. Like, we can, everybody can just be like, take, gig. But it's also really important, I feel like, and a responsibility for us as artists to give back to what has given us, what it has. It just can't, it has to be reciprocated somehow, because I don't know, like if I learned all this stuff from Tyrell, from Mark, from Vikas, then if I can't pass this knowledge on to somebody, then why, and bring them to, I don't want to say my level in a condescending way, right. But just, right. If they don't know anything, if they're asking questions or if they know some stuff and whatever.
Dude, at some point, the Padawan becomes the Jedi Knight, my friend.
Yeah, the Padawan is
logical progression.
So that's just, and that's not, I'm not sitting here like trying to become a master, but it's like if somebody is,
don't try, you just do.
If somebody is asking, and you're as a knowledgeable operating artist in this, realm, if you can't pass that knowledge on to them and bring them to a level where they feel that they learned something, that they feel that they're a part of something, and they learned about, maybe a little bit of that responsibility that I'm speaking of. Yeah. If you're able to create that, and that kind of becomes an environment, that's why, as cool as it is to buy 24 records in 3 minutes online, but that's why places like record shops, places like, independent music venues.
Shouts out Stellar Remnant, Rubicon, Vinyl Dreams.
Yes. And then that's why these places are so important. Like I honestly wouldn't have been able to learn half of the things that I know if I didn't spend time in these environments, like, mm-hmm. Yeah. People talk about, for example, like, going back to SF, people talk about Into the Void, Yano, and all this stuff. I was at Into the Void because I was volunteering at Vinyl Dreams. I would see that.
Shout out my team.
Yeah, and in the flesh.
And it's, these are just experiences that you cannot create online.
Yeah.
Like there's no way. Yeah. These are, tangible music. Yeah. These are things that you can't, and tangible moments that you feel in your bones. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And these are important things that happen in the downtime between getting the gig and posting about the gig you had. I'm about to get a gig. Here's my gig. I'm at the gig. I posted, look at all the crowd at the gig. That's cool. But there's a ton of shit under the hood that really makes everything go around. Yep. Volunteer at Vinyl Dreams. Mike B from Vinyl Dreams just told me a great story. Jonas Sharp just relaunched Reflective Records. With the record from his incredible son Jasper. Call Cell, props, Reflective Records is back. Mike B was the 17-year-old intern that put the hologram stickers interning for free at the Reflective Records office. Amazing. Back on Howard before he was even of age. And now he's running Vinyl Dreams 30 years.
And didn't they find one of the OG Reflective
on the box of holograms
for that record too?
The OG back on. So
that's legacy shit right there.
That's legacy shit. And the post on Instagram that anybody saw about it was like, here's the new record. It's there on the shelf. Mike B comments, love you guys. This is great. They said, love you too, Mike. Thank you. That's the social media equivalent of this massive, impressive, true legacy of musical connection that takes place and even giving me goosebumps talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? So the social media version is that. That's the shell of the shit. The real shit is what took place. And that's complete legacy shit. Through, multiple artists. I mean, Mike B is a legend, Jonah's a legend, Reflective's a legend. That shop has gone through several iterations that have changed all of our lives. That shop was Tweaking Records. That shop was where I found the Theo record that blew my mind open, that even got me to think about launching the label, and he and I bonded over. We wouldn't even be here. And none of that's on social media because it can't be. It can't be on social media. That's the real shit. And here's the thing. We're not here saying it's not about partying. I know the three of us fairly well. Everybody here likes to have a good time. And ladies and gentlemen, believe that.
Believe
okay?
that.
However,
I'm still getting the hangover from your fucking
I'm just saying, I mean, yeah, everybody watching knows exactly what I'm talking about, that knows it, 2 or 3 or all 3 of us. So having said that, parties are great. Having a good time is great. All of that is great. You know, socializing to it. We're social creatures. Water is great.
Water is amazing.
But the thing is parties, they come and they go.
Yep.
They come and they go. Gigs, they come and they go. Your posts about your gigs and your parties, it comes and it goes. All of that stuff is great, temporary ephemera. Okay. Now, adding to that culture, as it's expanding into 300,000 people at EDC, and that's all great. Like you, Stephen, I would love to see the culture. And this is probably more like our teachers like Mike Banks or Theo or some of these guys. This is how they felt, where if it's going to expand like that, it should expand like this too. It should be, we should be sitting in the Hammer Museum with 5,000 people discussing my legacy.
100%.
You can take 300,000 kids and give them all ecstasy and charge them $800 to go hear some EDM DJ. You can take 200 of them into a museum and tell them this is legitimate culture that was started by these people as well.
And you know who does that really well? The Broad does that well. You know, now it's not 100% our shit, right? But the Broad does that well. There are people that are curators in those environments, people that are quite literally like the cultural puppet masters now that are like, oh shit, this institution is dying because we don't have enough of this new wave of legacy. Right. And look, our culture, 50 years old, maybe. Okay, but there's still a huge absence, and we need advocates to come in and say the dimensionality of what we've experienced. Like when Jeff Mills plays at the Prada show, when you have Carl Craig doing gallery shows of what it's like to be in a warehouse. It's that, and again, the good, bad of the technology. When you can create immersive environments to replicate what it's like in that experience. I like to be in that personal experience myself, flesh and blood. But I also know that there's a huge audience that if they just got a taste of if they got a 10% experience of what I've experienced in that, it would change their lives. Experientially, it would change their lives. And it's that type of opportunity that I think that we have at this stage of the game to say, what does that expansion look like? How do we take it to that next place? Yeah. And I think you know, LAxD to connect, you know, T1000, Claude Young, Max Watts, DJ Dex, Cosmic, Dave Aju, Rodney, Juliet Mendoza, Rochelle, you know what I mean? All of those, that combination of people are all on the same page about wanting to push this forward. Yeah. And that's a lot of smart motherfuckers in one room. There's a lot going on in that room, right? So at the end of the day, that level of responsibility that you were talking about, Rodney, I think it does fall on our shoulders to be able to push that through and do the best job we possibly can.
Yeah, and it's everybody's shoulders, you know. It's not just the DJ. It's not just it's honestly everybody need, you know. One thing that we all learned, I feel like, during COVID and everything like that, and this is not a COVID rant by any means, but it's just something that we were able to experience in not, you know, the lightest way, was how much this really means to us.
Yeah.
So that means that, you know, everybody should not take it for granted. Everybody should be responsible. I mean, you know, I didn't really get to speak on my respect for Vikas that much, and I wanted to kind of take this opportunity to do that. This
Honored
person,
resident of Black Lodge, officially right here. I don't know if you want to lean forward.
Oh yeah, let's yeah.
I got.
Are you committed to Black Lodge?
I'm pretty committed. I got this Black Lodge tattoo.
Elbow in the front, lodge in the back.
Yep.
Here,
I don't know how do I.
You got it. You got it here.
Oh,
Back.
okay. So this is the Black Lodge logo, and you got it. It's on your. That's commitment.
It is because
That's
honestly,
commitment.
like the way I hello.
Oh shit.
We're here.
Yep. Yeah. So the way I got connected to Vicus was again, we go back, record store, guys. You know, we didn't meet online. So the record store that I worked at, RS94109, and they're basically running like subscriptions now because the retail space wasn't very sustainable for us. But
San Francisco prices.
yes, San Francisco rent, which is great. And then we basically met there because we started doing some events at the shop and at a warehouse, which was pretty rare for San Francisco, especially after everything that happened with Ghost Ship. Rest in peace, everybody.
Yeah.
But it also, that's how we met. And honestly, he blew my mind. I was like, dude, who is this guy? And I was working, so I was like running up and down the stairs. 1 minute, like I'm hearing Chicago stuff. 1 minute, I'm hearing Detroit stuff. And I basically owe all of my music taste to Detroit and Chicago. By the way, like for 90% of it, no offense to anybody else. Hey man, do what you got to do. But that's just in my opinion, it's incomparable. And the realness, the rawness. Anyway. So Vicus was just playing all of my favorite stuff, okay? And I'm just like, okay, what's going on here? And then we connected, and all I knew of Black Lodge was the records and, obviously the Twin Peaks and all that. But, we connected through there. And honestly, like when I got home, it was at 7 a.m. after working and everything. I was racing to go home to put records together because I wanted to kind of like express myself in a way that, I was like, man, I want to make a mix for Black Lodge. This is going to be like, and I was like, I was maybe like, I had like one mix out or something like that. And, vinyl mixes, it's a different story, putting them together and stuff. So I was really like, I made a pile and I was just, I went at it. And just like ever since then, how Vicus has treated me as a person, that I feel like is a question that everybody should ask themselves. Like, how well do you treat others? Because I feel like that really speaks volumes about people, regardless of what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like one thing is,
non-transactional.
Yeah, you can bring people into the party and give them a bunch of drugs and drink tickets and be like, okay, everybody, like, here we go, and milk them for every single dollar that they have. But one thing was that, and this is the moment that I was going back to, Vicus was going around asking people if they had fun. I have never seen that. It's so crazy to me that I have never seen nobody do that.
Yeah.
Everybody's
classic style.
yeah, everybody's just like,
Classic
you came to my party, it was great. So now tell me how awesome it was. And
You're welcome for this party.
Yeah, you're welcome. And
the thing that I find the through line again, the through line with this whole crew is the lack of ego. Just straight up, just the lack of ego. People are in it for the bigger community, and we're just about at time. But I want to just stress LAxD.
LAxD.
Yes.
I mean, hey,
it's all happening. All that we talked about is happening.
August 20th.
The
August 20th.
The family gathering.
It's happening.
Mayhem.
If you go to restlessnights.com/events/LAxD, the number 8_22. No, you're gonna remember that.
Oh yeah,
yes.
And links in all the bios and all
Links,
the socials that this will appear on.
Yes.
Actually, if one of us posts, we all post. We're like the anti-QAnon of reposting.
I heard the ring.
Yeah, we got dropped.
Also, you could go to record stores and the poster's there, and you can buy a record and a ticket. You can
There
do
you
that.
go.
Sell
There
revenue,
you go.
analog.
This is why we keep this
all of
gentleman
it,
around. You see,
it's all there.
3-for-1
See there?
special. Yeah, LAxD elbow grease. This is an import-export balance. Last thing I'd like to point out.
Yes, sir.
Lots of people in LA love you guys. West Coast, love you all. We're
love.
trying to do the export representation as well as the import. It's a party's part of it, but this is all for the love as well. Thank you all for supporting out there.
And let's not forget, Elbow Grease has got some stuff in the pipeline. Next one is in the pipeline. Early
Next one is
23.
in the pipeline. Spoiler alert: the first one was definitely clearly influenced by some Drexy hits and UR. Second
Yep.
one a little bit influenced by some Katie, Jason, Theo. Third one so far is a little bit more of a Shake meets Mills, if you will.
Wow.
I'm kind of hyped.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
just,
but you know, I'm gonna get my hands on that. You know what I mean? I'm gonna get my hands on that. You already know. Guys, Rodney, Dave Aju, Elbow Grease, LAxD happening on the 20th of August.
Yes.
Look forward to seeing you all out there.
You
Can't
know
wait.
what? That's it. That's all you need to know. Thank you guys so much. Much love, much
Much love to you,
appreciation. Keep doing what you're doing because you are quite literally doing God's work. So, guys,
Thanks, Steven. Appreciate it, man.
Flyers are flyers.